Hello, my name's Arthur, and today it's snowy and I'm all cozy here in my bathrobe, so I figured I'd just film a really casual video and talk with you guys. Life has been pretty good for me recently. I haven't filmed a video in like a month, which you might have noticed, and that's because my work life has been totally crazy. And not really like bad crazy. I'm a grad student, and so I work on projects, and then I have to present those projects to get feedback, and so I ended up getting a really early presentation date for a project, and then the project was very controversial, and again, not all in bad ways, but I just had to do a lot of emailing with people, and there's a lot of chaos and a lot of like academia drama and all that. But yeah, Harry, my boyfriend, and we had our 1 year anniversary, and I told him I wanted to do an adventure, and he assumed that an adventure meant like us going and doing some sort of exotic trip or, some sort of fun, cooking class, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, we ended up making candles together and eating dinner at a Fridays, which was actually exactly what I had in mind. I think I like just doing things with someone and doing things that aren't what I would normally do. And I do not normally make candles. So let me show you a candle. So we got this, we first went to a TJ Maxx, and there's where we chose these like cute little jars. And then we went to a Michael's, which is where we got the candle stuff to put in the candle, and the wick, and the scented oils, whatever it is. The scent of this candle is cherry blossom and lavender. So I think it's very aesthetic. Here's another. My second one is this little tiny mason jar that was at the TJ Maxx. This is supposed to be a salt and pepper shaker. But now it's a candle. They're honestly horrible candles. They don't really light, which according to the internet means we messed up something about the essential oils, but we followed the instructions, so I don't really know what we did wrong, but I think they're very aesthetic, and, whatever. I have, like, a crazy collection of candles that, let's see, I don't know if this is gonna be too hard to show you, but let's see. Do you see all those candles? There's a lot of candles. So I'm not in need of candle, and it's fine, this can just look pretty. But yeah. I think that these days, with regards to being transgender, I've been very anxious, like, very anxious. It's this very particular feeling where, I don't know if any of you guys feel this, but I am so happy in my transition. I mean, like, every video I've ever made, maybe, a lot of my videos are about how happy I am. I feel more confident than I ever could have believed I would feel. I feel more at home in my body. I feel attractive. I feel good, and I'm really me. And my transition has felt kind of profound in ways I didn't expect. Like, it really did matter for me, my like socialization, and feeling like now I get to exist in a male social role really works for me. Testosterone works for my brain chemistry. It's like everything is awesome. And then for some reason, it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's in the past year, transgender issues have just become this wedge issue, and it is all over everywhere. It's like unavoidable. And it just makes me feel so stressed. My transition has been like the best thing I don't want to say the best thing in my life, but it's been so good, and I don't know why it's become so political. Like, obviously, trans people, it's always been a little political, but, like, I was a non-passing trans man for some chunk of time, and it didn't feel as, like, heated as it does right now. I had been noticing that the New York Times had been publishing, like, non-stop articles that were like, should we be worried about transition? Should we be worried that maybe there are too many trans kids? Should we be worried about this? Blah, blah, blah. And a lot of, like, alarmist articles, and I was just like, the New York Times is talking nonstop about trans issues, and in this kind of a way, like, what is going on? And then you just see, like, Trump released a 3-minute tirade about what he was gonna do with transgender people, and I'm not too worried about Trump becoming president, but the fact that he felt like that was politically, like, good for him to release a 3-minute tirade about trans people is just so different. Like, he's, again, obviously run for president before, and he didn't have this kind of thing. He had these sort of fake friendship with Caitlyn Jenner and all that, and, like, some trans people are, whatever. And then in this tirade video, he had to make some offhanded comment about ending barbaric transition surgery in the United States. And I'm like, really? Like, I thought, I don't know, it's like, yeah, they were always talking about trans kids and talking about, gatekeeping and that sort of thing. And I was, of course, worried and, of course, saddened for trans kids, but I don't know, it still is surprising and scary when you realize what's at stake, which is what's at stake is, like, what I have going on right now, my, like, amazing life. And I think there's been, like, I don't know how. I don't know how some of these, like, this Texas politician wanting to ban transition in Texas could look at me and say that he wants me to be a woman. Like, I don't understand how anyone would want me to be a woman. It's, like, and it's so strange to realize that, like, I am very conforming, and I have done so many right things. Like, I look pretty masculine. I dress pretty conforming. I am extremely well educated. I am working a very conventionally, high status profession. I am easy to talk with. I am open minded. I've done all these things, and yet I'm still transgender. And so, like, they still don't want me to be. Like, it doesn't matter how many ways I can be acceptable and how many ways I can be tolerable. Like, they might not know I'm transgender, but if they knew, they wouldn't like me because of it, and that's so weird. It's weird, especially as, like, I'm a third-year PhD student, so I'm starting to think about what's going to happen when I graduate, and it's weird to think that, like, state by state, there are different policies around transgender people developing that will impact what state I feel like I can go to. And I think about how, like, when I was admitted to grad school, I spoke with a very famous economist, very, very famous, who has a transgender son who's a minor, and how now that there are these minor bans on transitioning, it's like this extremely famous economist can't move to certain states because of his son, and I'm like, that's just crazy. Like, so yeah, it's strange just sitting with the fact that I am trans, I'll always be trans, and no amount of making myself wealthy and educated is going to change the fact that I'm trans. And yeah, it's not to say that these anti-trans legislation that are passing, that these policies won't hurt low-income people. First, they unquestionably do. It is unquestionably harder if you're a low-income trans person of color than it is to be me. But it's like this feeling of the inescapability of it, the feeling of the inescapability of it that's, like, really hitting me. And it makes me feel very angry. It makes me feel angry that it's changing, and like, I talk with my parents, and they've noticed it too, that there's just been so much more discourse around transition. And I just don't get why we feel the need to discuss trans kids so intensely and publicly. There are all sorts of really hard problems that kids go through where parents have to make a serious choice on behalf of their kid, where they work with their doctors and the therapists to try to make the right call. I mean, kids go on Accutane, right, which is like a really very serious drug that can cause permanent effects and can cause depression, but it also has this, pro of curing your acne, and that many kids suffer from real psychological harm due to having acne, and that's a trade-off parents have to make, right? And that's a trade-off that some people might think it's the right call, some people think it's the wrong call, but they make that choice privately with their doctors, and we don't see, despite Accutane being way more prescribed than, transitional-related medicines, we just don't see it making the front page like this. And it's just so strange to talk about such an intimate medical thing so like, on such a nationwide scale, all the time, non-stop. And I find it very ironic, like, the New York Times had, again, all these articles about, like, social transition even. Like, should we be worried about social transition? And I'm like, since when did we worry about social transition? And then they published an article where they're like, something like, the parents of trans kids want, like, privacy for their kids too, or something like this. And I'm just like, do you not see how ironic this is, that you're talking about the need for privacy for trans kids while also running nonstop articles about trans kids? And as someone that, like, I literally made a video about the concept of detransition, like, a couple years ago now, and I said in that video, I've been following the detrans community for years, like, leading up to my transition. That was a community I followed immensely. They have always been there. It is always a thing that's been going on, and yet it's just hitting, like, the news wave right now, right? Like, it's, of course, serious, and of course it's a big deal. And I like, again, I literally have a whole video talking about how I think we need to be compassionate, treat it like it's a real problem, not dismiss their concerns, etc. But it's so strange to see that the media like fully ignores, does not care about detransitioners, doesn't really care about trans people, again, just kind of like apathy, and then just it's just non-stop, like, we should worry about detransition, we should worry about detransition, we should worry about detransition, trans kids, trans kids, trans kids. And it's like something is happening, right? Like, it's not like anything really has changed recently. I've been a trans person, right, this whole time. It's just now all of a sudden it's enticing. It's this wedge issue. They just really, like, we have become the target of interests. And it feels silly complaining about this because I know that plenty of other groups have experienced this, right, where you get a ton of heightened attention narrowly on you because you're the 0.5% of society that people want to debate about, because these debates get people views and they get people whatever. So, yeah, it's not like I'm claiming that trans people are the first ever to experience this. It's just weird. Like, it's weird to watch it happen. It's unnerving to watch it happen. It's unnerving to not know where it's going to end. And again, I call my parents talking about this because it was just really freaking me out. And their prediction was that, you know, so I'm an American, I guess, obviously based on my accent, and that it's going to, you know, it's going to get worse leading up to the primaries, and then maybe we'll get better thereafter, right? Because going up to the primaries, the candidates want to seem more extreme and take their big stance on the transgender issue, right? And that's a bit away, right? So I just feel like I have, like, years of uncertainty up ahead of, like, what's going to happen to trans people and what's going to happen to my community, and I don't like it. I don't like it. It makes me mad. I'm not really on social media in general, which you might know because a lot of people ask for my Instagram, and I'm like, I don't have one. I have a non-active, like, academic Twitter, and so by that I mean I just, like, I don't post or tweet anything. It is not with my name. It's just, like, a series of random characters is the handle, and then I follow economists so that I can see what they're talking about. And I saw this economist at my institution talking about J.K. Rowling and the transgender extremists. And I just thought, like, how does he have the audacity to tweet on his economic Twitter about transgender extremists? Like, he clearly doesn't think that there's a single transgender economist that could be reading this, and that could feel really shitty when you see that one of your professors, again, not, like, directly mine, but, like, one step away from my professor, someone, like, in my community, thinks this about my people, that we're trans... And, like, there's been, again, non-stop talk about J.K. Rowling and her new game, and just non-stop discourse, and I'm like, we've seen this before, right? Like, this is, I feel like, a very common issue, right? You have someone or a corporation that has beliefs that are not aligned with yours, and they make them very public, right? Clearly, many people we disagree with all the time, and we don't know, and we keep on buying their products. But there are some people that choose to make that, like, their thing. They're going to stand behind their beliefs, and their brand incorporates their beliefs, right? With the Chick-fil-A debate or whatever, all that stuff, right? And we've had those debates about should you boycott those products, right? It ends up with some people on one side, some people on the other side, whatever. It's probably not the hugest deal in the world in terms of, like, what is going to immediately cause an impact to gay rights or to trans rights or whatever. We've had that debate before, and yet here we are, hashing it out nonstop over and over again, and everyone is taking this as their opportunity to defend J.K. Rowling, and I'm like, I don't want to hear about it anymore. I just don't want to hear about it anymore, and I can't opt out of it. I went on, after seeing this economist talk about how J.K. Rowling isn't bad after all, I was like, I haven't really, like, again, personally, I was never that into Harry Potter. I'm sorry, I was not. I never really cared, and I was like, okay, my childhood is not crushed by J.K. Rowling perhaps having bad beliefs, so I just didn't investigate it a ton, and I go and I look. I was like, okay, I'll look at her Twitter, I'll see. Maybe she isn't, maybe I'll keep an open mind. And it is non-stop talk about trans people in this horrible light. I don't know how anyone could read her Twitter and not say that's transphobic. So, like, the way that people will jump to her defense is that she does not make statements like all trans people are bad. No, she instead does something maybe a little more clever where she says, transgender rapists are bad, transgender rapists are bad, transgender rapists are bad. And obviously, I don't disagree with that fact, but, like, it means something to always be putting transgender and rapist next to each other like that. It means something when you, like language and words have meaning. The way that we present ideas has meaning. And, like, if all you talk about are some evil trans people, you're gonna paint this view that all trans people are evil, and that is transphobic, yes. Like, you have not got your way out of this by focusing only on evil trans people. It is, in fact, the focusing on only evil trans people and giving so much of your platform to trans people that, yeah, that makes you transphobic. So anyways, I'm like, here I am, feeling really stressed about this, and feeling, like, very angry, and feeling like I'm losing control, and I don't know, and it also just... It's had negative impact too, like, aside from just literally the feeling of anxiety and stress about losing something that is so important to me. It's had other more direct impacts where, so, I have a lot of trans friends these days, which has been great. And a good chunk of them are non-binary, and that's really great. That's fine. I'm not, and those people's relationship to gender has always been very different from mine, and that's something I could talk about extensively. But I found that this time of this heightened attention on transition has brought up these, like, unhealthy impulses with regards to these friends, wherein, like, they will make comments like, oh, what have politicians ever done for us? And my thought as a binary trans person, again, where this is true for many non-binary people too, right? Not all are sort of on that other camp, but I'm like, politicians recently, in recent years, have made it so that I could change my birth certificate in Maine without sterilizing myself. Like, that's a recent change. That I could change my passport to an M marker without having to do, I think, proof of gender surgery, like, gender-affirming surgery. Like, I can access informed consent hormones, so I could choose to transition, where they have made it so that, like, sort of even at my institution, my university has great policies around transgender people. All that is the work of politicians. My life as a trans person has been massively improved by sort of classic Democrats. It does matter for me that, like, and we can argue that those Democrats should be more left, etc., but it does matter to me whether it's Republicans or Democrats in office. It matters. I get that for other people, they haven't done the things that they would like with regards to transgender people, right? Where if you're someone who's non-passing or uses they, them pronouns, you probably don't feel like I do, which is that I feel good about the state of things. I feel, like, personally, like, pretty taken care of. There aren't a ton of things I would change in my current institution, my current state I'm living in. Things are pretty good. And I get that, again, not for all trans people, but, like, they're pretty good. It really matters. And so I start feeling resentful, where I'm like, I think it is really cool that a lot of people identify as non-binary these days. I think it's, like, the fact that people will simultaneously, they'll say, like, non-binary is the new goth or something like this, and they'll argue that it's a phase, it's just dressing differently, etc. Because for a lot of people, being non-binary is first and foremost a deeply personal identity, and then it is second, like, social changes, right? Like dressing differently, having a different haircut, using different pronouns. For many people, it isn't medical, and for some it is, right? But for some it isn't. And I'm like, okay, so you're gonna argue it's not a big deal, these people are just sort of overhyping up some sort of identity choice. And then these people will turn around and simultaneously say, and they're making a horrible, irreversible choice, and everything is, their whole life is thrown away by their choice to identify as non-binary. And I'm like, you have to pick your side, right? Either it is just a fad and it's like goths and it's not a big deal and they're putting too much energy into it, or they're making some sort of irreversible choice that is bad, and you just can't have it both ways. And so, anyways, I do think that is the case that a lot of trans people nowadays are non-binary, and that probably wasn't always the case, and that people who are non-binary wouldn't have used the label trans in the past. Some of them wouldn't have. And some of them would have identified as binary trans people because they wanted to get access to medical care, and so that's how you'd have to do it. And other people who didn't want access to medical transition might have identified sort of as genderqueer, or fit into other subcultures that, like, allowed for gender nonconformity. Anyways, I really, in my heart of hearts, my, like, authentic belief is we're all, like, the trans community is one community, we're a big umbrella with many different lived experiences. But when I get all this negative press really gets to me, and there's this part of my brain that starts to feel resentful about the fact that many non-binary people are visibly trans, and that it's this visibility of transness that has brought this negative attention towards trans people, including binary trans people like myself, or just people who desire to pass, which, again, because non-binary people might want to pass as men or women, respectively, and that some of these same non-binary people don't really care for, like, the same access to, like, legal transition that I needed, and the same access to medical transition that I needed, and it starts to make me feel, bitter. And, like, that's so messed up. Like, this is not happening. This is not a good or healthy impulse. And also, like, it is absolutely the case that many of the things that I so need are because of visibly trans people that chose to take up space and advocate for the things we needed. And it is due to those people that I have access to to these amazing things like medical and legal transition. And so I really hate to have these feelings cropping up of, like, these feelings of territorialness and these feelings of, yeah, of just resentment. I hate it so much. I hate to see it in myself. And I was talking to my parents about this, and they were emphasizing that, yeah, like, this is a classic tactic that happens with political change, where you want to isolate the good and the bad of a marginalized group, right? And here I am being like, no, I'm in the good of the trans. I'm a good trans. And no, it's infighting is like, it is like a classic, it's a classic tactic. And so I, like, hate to feel that. I hate to feel all these things that are coming up. And so I think I just took a step back and saw, like, what following this news was doing to me, which was making me paranoid and making me anxious and making me resentful of people within my own community who do not deserve that at all. And my parents had this good suggestion of, like, maybe you should just not follow the news. So that's where I'm at, right? If you're looking for, like, if you're in the same boat as me where you're just not vibing these days with what's happening, I think I do have some suggestions, right? It's like, what does following the news accomplish for me? I mean, really, basically nothing, right? Yeah, when I'm making a choice to live, it does matter if the laws are on trans people. That is going to affect my choice. There are going to be various points where I need to step back, take in information, and make a choice. But that's not right now. I do not need to be consuming all of this. It's hard to even call it information because many of these laws haven't passed. They're all proposed legislation that's pretty horrible. I do not need to be thinking about these horrible outcomes that might not happen for states that I don't live in, that sometimes are affecting groups that are not me, like trans youth, because it just accomplishes nothing for me. It just makes me bitter and anxious. And the reality of it is, like, I've said this before, but I'm not a transgender activist. And I don't think that, like, just because I'm trans, I should have to be an activist. I think a lot about the ways that I accomplish good in the world, and I think, like, I really am first and foremost an economist. That is what I'm skilled at. I am skilled at being an economist. I'm not really skilled at being an activist. And so if I'm not an activist, like, I'm not going to do anything about these policies. I'm not going to. And I think, again, like, the pressure shouldn't be on me as a trans person to do this. If people, I feel like people, like, there's some feeling like where people are asking me, like, why am I not writing letters? Why am I not, starting a protest or leading a march or emailing people? And I'm just like, because, like, why aren't we asking that same question to every single person? Like, why do I have to answer that question because I'm trans? Like, the reality is I'm not good at it. I am good at other things, and I have ways that I'm going to have impact in the world. And that's why I really, like, respect and trust the choices of transgender activists, right? Like, I think there are a lot of trans people like myself who, like, want to sit back and criticize people for pushing things that don't directly benefit them, right? Where they want to say, oh, well, I think actually the transgender activists should not be encouraging pronoun circles, or I think that they actually should have this specific set of things around transgender youth, where social transition is okay, but medical transition is not, and this is my opinion. So they want to say all those things, but they don't actually want to, like, show up and do it, right? And I'm like, okay, if I'm not going to show up and do it, I trust whatever these people who are actually talented at activism have in mind for the path of transgender people. And so I'm not going to follow the news anymore. And what does that mean for me? Well, that means I like scrolling on Reddit. I've really liked Reddit. But these days, the FTM community, the, like, transgender, even the meme pages are just nonstop negative stuff. It's, like, really disheartening. I can't open up the app without seeing another, like, horrible bill that has been proposed or hearing about J.K. Rowling. So I'm not on Reddit anymore. And I've been trying to not even be on econ Twitter, because, I can just keep on seeing this stuff, even on my econ spaces. I haven't been on Instagram. I'm barely on Facebook. And actually, so I do like scrolling. So I need some substitute. The thing of just don't scroll on your phone at all, not going to work. I need some substitute. My substitute has been TikTok. Which I held off on TikTok for so long. I don't have an account where I post, so you won't be able to follow me. But I held off on TikTok for so long because I do worry that it eats at your brain a little, but probably all social media eats at your brain a little. And at least this, like, somehow I've got it so my algorithm is not depressing news. It is random people doing silly shit, and that's what I need. I think that's in part because Harry will send me TikToks. He's been on TikTok for a lot longer than me, and so previously I would just have the app to like open his TikToks, but now the algorithm has like duplicated his algorithm onto mine, and so now I see that plus a bunch of like working out content because I'm really into working out, and so that's been kind of funny because like TikTok really thinks I'm a jock. I like that aesthetic for myself. Maybe aspirationally I am, but yeah. So I watch silly stuff on TikTok, and I've quit all the other things. And then there's a lot of like I can take active steps to try to keep myself safe. So I finished my legal changes, and there are like a few residual things that I've had to push through, and I have been more proactive about that because I'm worried, right? So I finished like changing my birth certificate. I signed up for the draft. I finally, one of my like savings accounts, I hadn't changed my name on it. I finally did that. I have a couple more things like that to do, and I'm just like, I'm cleared. Like I am 100% safe from these sort of things. My birth certificate, like Maine did this cool thing where they sealed the old one, so you can't even see it. Like I am male for good. Like that is done. So I get prescribed testosterone in these single-use vials where I get 4 a month, and each vial has like several doses of testosterone in them. And my nurse that first prescribed me testosterone was like, oh, they recently changed this. I think it's silly. Just wipe off the vial with an alcohol wipe, and you can use the same one multiple times. And I think arguably the reason they changed this is just because the pharmaceutical companies wanted to make more profit, and they could justify it by saying it was about safety. So anyways, so I get prescribed a lot more testosterone than I use a month, and so I'm just hoarding testosterone. You can't, like, if you try to buy it illegally, it is a controlled substance in the United States, so you could get in trouble. But things like needles and stuff to inject aren't controlled substances, at least again to my knowledge. So if like something like shit totally hits the fan, I have saved up some vials, and I would be able to get needles, and I would be good for a bit. So that's something I can do. So I've done that, and I'm going to keep trying to be really proactive about getting my testosterone refilled and saving the extra vials, and just like keeping myself safe. And so, like that's what I do, right? Like, and I think it's just, I hope it's not too long, right? Like I hope things turn around in a year or two, and I do believe, like I'm an optimistic person, and I believe, like, I believe generally society is on the right path, all those things. So it makes it, I don't know, especially weird to see us going astray with this stuff. And just so weird when I'm like, and I think this is what was making me so anxious. I just really am happy. Like, I'm really happy I transitioned. I've been working out a lot, and I really like my body. My top surgery looks great. Like, just, life is really good, and I don't want that to change. I don't want that to take it away. And I don't want to, like, turn into a bitter, annoying person because of it. So, yeah. And I guess, I don't know, in terms of impact I have, like, I think I am impactful with this channel, and I think I'm more impactful with this channel than I would be if I was trying to fight transgender bills. Like, I would not be good at that. That's not what I meant to do. And so I think any amount of energy I have that feels like something I can devote to people beyond myself as I feel stressed in this time, it's like I want to devote that to more videos. I think that's the way I can help out my community, not by, like, I'm really not an activist, I'm not. And so yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to talk with you guys about that. This is like, obviously a much more rambly and low-key video than most of mine are, but I think I normally make videos that are so, like, positive and thoughtful and reflective. And now that I've been having these sort of anxious, negative thoughts, I thought, I don't know, I want to be authentic and talk really about what's going on, and I thought it would feel cathartic, which it has, to talk with you guys about it. But yeah, I hope you're holding up well, especially because I know that many of my viewers are probably in states and that are more directly affected by the stuff that I am. I hope you're doing okay, and just know that I feel your pain at least a little, and that I think it's really unfair that we're becoming such a political pawn right now, and it really sucks. And I think that also my anxiety has also been because I've just had, again, so much positive, but like so much worse stuff going on that it makes it harder to deal with all this uncertainty around the state of, trans people in the US. And, as my work lets up a bit, as I've quit following all these negative sources of social media, as I, stock up more in testosterone and film more of these videos, I'm just hoping that I will go back to feeling as I've really felt this past year, which is like loving that I have such a strong trans community and feeling just calm and happy and supported and all those good feelings.